Right.
And so when you're in abundance of food and you don't do the hunter-gatherer thing and whatever, any biological organism, not just a human being, but an animal will get fat because it's designed to conserve calories, consume them when they're available.
Right.
And to willfully expend calories goes against your DNA. And so there are people that love HIIT training, but they're able to get an emotional state that can temporarily override their biological foundation of conserving calories and consuming them. So in comes biohacking. How do I get this result? Because I know innately the chances of me sticking with a fitness routine is very difficult because I've failed at it time and time again, right? So what do you do?
Good morning and welcome to the Fusionary Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Shivani Gupta, and this is the podcast dedicating to recalibrating your health every day. My goal is to help you wake up each day energized by addressing root causes and giving you new approaches to preventive health. The more we know about integrative health, the more empowered we are in building the vibrant health we want. Hello and welcome to the Fusionary Health Podcast. Today, I have a very special guest for you, Kyle Zagrodzky, founder of OsteoStrong. Did I say your name right, Kyle?
You nailed it. You got it completely right. You 1 in 100 people get it right. So congratulations. You're the top 1%.
Thanks. Well, I have an unusual name, so I'm always like trying to get names right because people say Shivani Gupta and they mess up with the Gupta all the time. So welcome to the podcast. I'm excited to have you. We met at a Tony Robbins conference. I went to UPW with my sister, I believe it was last year. And I remember seeing OsteoStrong. I remember hearing about it. And I was like, oh, what is this? Like, I'm all about bone health and joint health and our bodies being as healthy as possible. And it felt like such a new concept. And when we met, I was like, oh, one day I want to interview him and understand what was the impetus for creating this concept that you have for the world. So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. And I'm excited to be here. Always excited to evangelize OsteoStrong any way I can.
Awesome. So will you share your story of what led you to creating this and then share with us what OsteoStrong is for those who haven't heard?
Sure. So I'm what you would refer to my whole life as a bootstrap entrepreneur, which is to say that I come up with ideas, I self-fund them, I take them to the world. Over the past 30 years, my companies have generated well over $200 million in revenue. I tell you that not to impress you at all, simply impress upon you that for me to get excited to do something, it's something I have to be truly interested and excited in. I will not get out of bed and work on things just to make money. I have to see the bigger place that it fits in the universe and how it serves and this kind of thing. And then I get excited about it. Then I start visioning and making it happen and that kind of thing. OsteoStrong was around 2010, 2011, I was bored. I owned a software company, was doing great, but I just didn't want to do it anymore. I was like, going, okay, this is great. It serves its place in the world, but I'm done with that. And so I turned the operations over to my business partner. And I was going to go start a health club chain, as I'd had experience in that. I'd owned 9 gyms before. And one of the things I enjoyed about the fitness industry is because people are coming there looking for help and you try to provide a solution. But when I kind of really looked at the fitness industry, there was really nothing unique in it. Everybody just had it was the same equipment or the same kind of exercises, just a shiny new brand that, some equity company would pump a money into it. It would go up, and then in 10 years or less, it would go down, and somebody else would copy it. And there were like 35,000 gyms in the United States. So it was an overserved industry. Sure. And so to me, that wasn't unique or interesting. And kind of about the time I said, you know what, I don't want to do this. This is the world doesn't need another gym or another fun concept. And it would just feel like I was kind of selling myself short. And no judgment of anybody who goes in the industry. It was just my personality. And so at about that time, somebody knew that that's what I was thinking about doing. So they contacted me and they told me about this guy who had created this new device, and it was this prototype, and he was going on and on and on about it. And I thought, okay, well, I'm from the Southern United States. And so we have this politeness that runs through us such that we don't like just flat out telling people no. Yeah. Unlike people in the northern, northeast part of the country, they'll just straight up tell you no, which I've come to respect.
Yeah.
And appreciate. And so I told him no, but it turned out the guy was coming and doing a presentation on this device to a state that I just moved to like 6 months before. And it was his first device off the line. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go check it out. Wouldn't listen to him. And what he told me utterly shocked me. And he was talking about it. And I thought to myself, I fell in love and I had fear at the same time. I loved what he was explaining. It made total sense to me. Sure. But my fear was that no one's going to believe this device is able to achieve the outcomes that it does because it smashes every paradigm of fitness and wellness type of activity that we'd ever encountered before. And so he had stumbled upon potentially a new industry concept. Wow. But without a lot of fuel and energy behind it, it was never going to succeed. So this beautiful invention was going to go into the dustbin of history. And I said, no, not this is why I'm here. This is why I stumbled into this, and this is my calling. So I took him out to dinner. He didn't believe I was going to do it, and I said, you know what? You haven't met Kyle Zagrodzky. Yeah. And I get it. All you have is your what to go on and who you've met. And so I started the company and launched it about 11 years ago. Nice. And so now we have about 200 locations in 13 countries.
Wow. 200 locations in 13 countries in 10 years.
Yes.
That's amazing.
A little busy.
Yeah, a little busy is an understatement. That's a lot. Yeah. Well, share with us OsteoStrong, because I think so many of us love going to the gym. I love HIIT training. I love lifting, love doing all the things. And we're told as we're aging, all of a sudden, pay attention to your bone health, pay attention to your bone density, make sure you're lifting weight so that you are building your bone density. But so many people who I meet either hate cardio or hate running or hate HIIT training or hate lifting. So many people want to avoid working out in general, which I understand. And then I also feel like as we age into our 40s and 50s, I'm learning maybe I can't be so intense in my workouts. Maybe I have to be more deliberate or conscious to get the exact result that I need for longevity. Mm-hmm. So will you share the importance of OsteoStrong and this device and what it does? Because I'm curious. I want to understand. I'm always looking into biohacking tools and the tools I need to maintain good health, especially looking at the family history that I have.
Sure. I think that let's talk a moment about the concept of biohacking sure. And really what it is. The idea of biohacking is simply you're trying to get an outcome in the most efficient, healthy way possible, right. Based upon scientific research that's available. And so why is it that people are interested in efficiency when it comes to his health? And you stated it, is that you talk to a lot of people that just simply don't like to engage in fitness. And there is a biological reason for that. Like we can't judge human beings that don't want to engage in fitness because it goes against our very DNA, our biology to engage in fitness. We are calorie consumers and calorie conservers at our core. We are designed that way. Right. And so when you're in abundance of food, and you don't do the hunter-gatherer thing and whatever, any biological organism, not just a human being, but an animal will get fat because it's designed to conserve calories, consume them when they're available. Right. And to willfully expend calories goes against your DNA. And so there are people that love HIIT training, but they're able to get an emotional state that can temporarily override their biological foundation of conserving calories and consuming them. So in comes biohacking. How do I get this result? Because I know innately the chances of me sticking with a fitness routine is very difficult because I've failed at it time and time again, right? So what do you do? So am I a fan of fitness? Absolutely. The science supports it, right? The thing that people need to be generally careful of in fitness is too much of it creates inflammation. Correct. And so you want that balance between how do I get my cardiovascular health, maintain muscle density, get the endocrine benefit from it, et cetera, right. But not too much as I don't want to cause inflammation. And And so there's HIIT training is great, but you really don't want to do that for more than like 15 minutes. And so then you're kind of done. Long-term cardio causes all kind of inflammation. Way OsteoStrong works, and one of the things, there's a lot of things that get me really excited about it. But from the high level, it takes about, you're in an OsteoStrong for 10 or 15 minutes, 1 day a week. You don't need to wear any kind of special fitness clothes because you're not going to get fatigued or break a sweat or get sore the next day. So you can just come in your everyday clothes. And in reality, when you're in an OsteoStrong, the total amount of effort that you put into it is about 60 seconds or less. And so that's how hard it is. Like, it's not hard. And anybody could do anything for 60 seconds. So as a result, we see between 90 and 100% of our members at every facility around the world every week. Whereas in the gym industry, and even a really popular gym that the members like, on the busiest day of the month, they're only going to see about a third of their members. We're seeing 3 times that every week that people come in. It is unbelievable. The attrition rate is really low, and yet these people are getting this outcome. So you can do fitness and OsteoStrong at the same time. OsteoStrong is going to augment anything you're doing in fitness. But if you don't want to do fitness, fine, I get it. A lot of people don't want to do it. Then OsteoStrong is something that you will actually do, because you can have the best invention in the world, providing the best results to humanity in whatever topic or area you want. But if people don't know about it and don't use it, then it's a failure. And so that's where I come in. I'm like, okay, I know this is going to create this result. Now it's my job to take it to the world and help people get the benefit. And OsteoStrong does several things for human health in an extraordinary way. And with research, I could show you that it's the best at what it does in terms of improving bone density, physical strength, balance, posture, eliminating joint and back pain, and reducing A1C, or long-term blood glucose.
That's a big deal.
It's massive. And so considering that it takes 60 seconds of effort 1 day a week, why wouldn't you do it?
Sure.
And so, we have people now in their 80s and 90s that have been going to OsteoStrong for years that have the bone density of a 30-year-old. We have people who've had scoliosis whose spine is straightened out, people with chronic joint and back pain for years. And I'm one of those people. I had all kinds of joint and back pain from sports-related injuries in my teens and early 20s, gone after a few sessions. And so these kinds of results are available with minimal effort. And I think that's one of the things that people really like about OsteoStrong.
Sure. So first of all, I loved your definition of biohacking, because a lot of times I'll reach out and say, hey, I'm available to be on your podcast. And I do talk about, biohacking from an Ayurvedic perspective. And as you know, I'm into turmeric, and people like biohacking, and they have a negative opinion, but it really is just the most efficient way to achieve a result with your health. I'm a big believer in daily rituals, daily lifestyle, doing the things that we need to daily for vibrant health. But we could also implement some great tools that help us get there faster and maintain the result. And so, like you said, if you're not going to be consistent, if you're not going to continue to use it, what's the point? You're wasting your money, you're wasting your time, like a gym membership that you don't use, or if you buy devices for the home, like we bought a Peloton and then we were over it. We never used it. And I can't get rid of it. No one wants to buy it off of me. And so I hate exercise equipment at home that gathers dust. I would rather go somewhere to the expert, get the workout done, get the thing done, and then I'm complete with it. And so will you talk for a moment about bone health? Because it's one of those things I don't think people think about. The way I think of bone health is most women suffer from osteoporosis, osteopenia. We have to think about it over time. I know that if we're not careful when we're breastfeeding and in our childbearing years, we could easily, that's the time when it starts, our lack of bone density. And then I also have heard a statistic where people who are older, past, let's say 70 or 80, their risk of mortality increases like something fold because of hip fractures and falling. So will you kind of dive into that? Why? Why is it so important that we take our bone health seriously in this year?
Well, there's a number of things to keep in mind on that. First of all, it's not just a female issue; it's a male and female issue. About half of all women will suffer an osteoporotic fracture after the age of 50, and it's about 1 in 3 men. So it is, and that, so those numbers are outrageous. And one of the things you stated, there's a hip fracture in somebody over the age of 65 has a greater mortality rate than breast cancer. You are going to die in the next 2 years at a greater rate than had you just gotten breast cancer. And so it's not the hip fracture that kills you; it's your entire everything starts to decline rapidly after a hip fracture. So it is virtually a life-ending event. And for people who do survive it, the quality of life isn't all that great afterwards. So it's a big concern. So the idea of maintaining your bone health or being aware of it is kind of deceptive, because no one knows how to build bone density. And so back in the 1890s, there was a guy by the name of Dr. Julius Wolff who conducted a study, and he determined that if you put enough pressure on human bones, they will remodel and get stronger. And it's called Wolff's Law. It's still taught in medical schools and at chiropractor schools to this day. The one thing that has never been known is how much pressure is actually needed to trigger this osteogenic effect or the development of new bone. And so there was a researcher that came along in 2012 by the name of Kevin Deere, and he was out of Bristol, United Kingdom, and he conducted a study with the singular goal of determining how much force is needed to trigger osteogenesis. And you could do blood tests and DEXA scans to see whether or not this has happened. And so he had over 1,000 subjects. He attached accelerometers to their hips and had them doing various activities, and he would express the amount of force that they were able to generate in terms of multiples of their body weight, which makes sense because a person who's a man who's 250 pounds versus a woman who's 110 pounds, it would make sense that only multiples of your body weight would be really relevant, because that's the amount of weight that your skeletal system is used to holding. And what he found was very interesting. He discovered what I call the boiling point of water, that it requires a minimum of 4.2 multiples of your own body weight to trigger osteogenesis. Before that, nothing happens. So this idea that lifting weights is going to build bone is impossible. Sprinting doesn't build bone density. And so there was a guy who recently set a world record deadlift. It was around like almost 1,200 pounds. He weighs over 350 pounds, this guy. He did not put enough force on his body in that deadlift to trigger osteogenesis.
Wow.
Think about that. And so this idea of like taking care of your bone health and blah, 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 like it's nice to know, but if you don't know what to do or how to do it, then you're never going to be able to do anything about it. It's like, okay, I got low bone density. What do I do? Now, there are some supplements that will slow the loss of bone, and in some cases, even slightly increase the bone density. And there are some things you can do on your own. They're just not highly effective. And most human beings reach peak bone mass at the age of 30 and then start declining thereafter. It's one of the reasons why you don't see professional athletes doing their thing much beyond their 30s, because as your bones get weaker, your muscles get weaker. Your central nervous system will never allow your muscles to become stronger than what your bones can handle. You can't break your own bones with the strength of your body. And so as your skeletal system weakens, your muscles weaken, and you become a weaker human being. Joint and back pain, posture, balance, all these things are linked to the strength of your musculoskeletal system. And in fact, we know that your muscles and your bones are absolutely critical to longevity. There have been archaeological studies of different civilizations, and there's been long-term studies done on human beings. And one common factor exists. Weak people don't live a long time.
Frailty.
And so the stronger you are, the longer you're going to live. And so having strong bones is the foundation, a big deal. But bone density is also linked to many other things. Type 2 diabetes and loss of bone density are connected. Dementia and low bone density are connected. Your immune system is affected by your bone density. And so it's like, okay, well, crap, I've got to take care of my bones. What do I do? Weights don't work. Running doesn't work. Supplements, kind of. Pharmaceuticals work, but you could only take a bisphosphonate, which is the primary class of pharmaceutical medication, for 4 years. And then you're never supposed to take it again because the side effects become too dangerous. So we see people now getting bone density in their 30s and 40s. In fact, bone density in Western civilization, and I would say argue many places around the world, has been declining steadily since 1900. In fact, it's pandemic levels. There was a meta-analysis study that was published in 2020 that showed that simply looked at the direct cost of osteoporotic fractures in the United States, Canada, and Europe, and found that it was between $5 to $6.5 trillion a year. And considering that human beings are losing bone density at a continual rate,
Right.
that COVID actually caused if you had COVID, you had a precipitous loss in bone density as well. We are set up on a civilization ending event in the next 50 to 100 years on bone density alone.
Wow.
And so what do you do? Well, you need to get 4.2 multiples of your body weight. Now, Dr. Jaquish made an app for the iPhone called Fracture Proof. And essentially it took advantage of the accelerometer in your phone. You would hold it tightly against your hip after entering in your weight. You would jump off various things and see how hard it would be to create 4.2 multiples of your body weight. In fact, it's quite hard.
I'm sure. And wouldn't you hurt your ankles or hurt something along the way?
You think about it, like if I took a solid weight and just dropped it and measured the impact and expressed the amount of force as 4.2 multiples of the weight of that object, I would only have to drop an object about 20 to 22 inches for that to happen.
Sure.
However, the human body is different. We're built with shock absorbers. They're called our knees, our hips, and our muscles.
Yeah.
And your central nervous system doesn't like impact, so you can't help but to bend your knees and your hips. So you can jump off 20 inches, but you're not going to do 4.2 multiples of your body weight because your body doesn't like it. And so I tried this. I was going around jumping off I'm jumping off on the concrete floors, jumping off a countertop. And I almost broke 4.2 one time. And I was trying not to flex my knees, my hips, and it hurt.
Sure.
So,
I mean, it's so interesting what you're saying because we're taught that weightlifting is enough. Like when I go to the gym and I'm doing deadlifts and I'm doing hip thrusters and I can do back squats and I like loading the weight to an extent. I always tell my trainer, I'm a short Indian girl. Like I can't just lift 200 pounds. He's like, pick up the weight. And so I have trained heavier. What you're saying is despite that, we're not going to build bone health. Like that's not fair.
No.
That's not fair that the thing we've been told this whole time we're doing for good isn't quite.
It is good. Lifting heavy is really good for you. There had been a lot of research that shows you're going to get far superior benefits and less inflammation if you lift heavy. So I don't want to discourage that.
Sure.
Continue to lift heavy. But for bone density, you're not going to build bone density. And no judgment of trainers and doctors that think that way, because they were only taught Wolff's Law in school. And Wolff's Law, essentially, bone remodeling occurs when bone deformation occurs, and you do that through intense amount of force on the body. We just never knew, and it hasn't been put into medical school. So Kevin Deer's study has not been baked into medical schools. There's not bone doctors. There's orthopedic surgeons, but you don't have doctors that help you do that because there is not a viable medical solution for helping people develop superior bone density. Sure. There's only methods of treating once you get to a certain negative T-score that shows that you're in a situation you need to take a bisphosphonate. And so you could develop superhuman bone. It's easy to do. I'll be 55 in 2 weeks, and my bone density is that of a professional 25-year-old rugby player. But it's not because I'm anything special. It's just that I stimulate my central nervous system to build bone and muscle strength every week.
What's also fascinating to me about what you're saying is, as women, when we go into perimenopause and menopause, we're told you better focus on muscle and building muscle. But what you're saying is you will not continue. And there's two parts to this. One, I just spoke at a longevity conference in Las Vegas called A4M, and I pulled all the science on curcumin for longevity. So all the research said cellular senescence, autophagy, our sirtuins, our telomeres. As we age, the body is going to age and it's going to slow down. And what I found fascinating about it after I read all of the science for months so I could present, I was like, wow, we're actually trying to defy gravity. Because as women, we want to look, and probably men too, We want to look healthier, more vibrant. I want more energy. I want to feel stronger. When I go to the gym and lift, I want the same result that I was going to get 10 or 15 years ago. I don't want to lose my gains or my results. But what you're saying is if I don't build my bone health, I'm not going to get to build my muscle. So then that's like I always look for what's my leverage point with someone. With me, that would be my leverage point. If
Yeah.
you want to build muscle and be strong over time, you have to go do this homework once a week for 15 minutes to build
As your bone density declines, your workouts and the amount you lift will go down. And if you went to OsteoStrong, you'd be able to lift more. You would be shocked. Within a month or two, everything you do at the gym would just start getting easier. You'd be like, "Is it possible?" Right?
That's awesome.
And we see this with high performance world class athletes that come to OsteoStrong. They start breaking their own records after a month or two at OsteoStrong. Like, how is this even possible?
Nice.
We had Tim O'Donnell set the U.S. record at the Ironman in Kona, Hawaii in 2019, 6 months after he added OsteoStrong to his workouts. And I talked to his trainer. She says all of his time gains started happening after he started OsteoStrong.
Nice.
Now it was substitute. You're still going to have to train for the endurance. There's a lot of cardio and all the things that go on.
Sure.
But he got stronger. There was a pilot study that Dr. Ann Sung did for aerospace medicine research for NASA. And she was a 31-year-old power lifter, a professional power lifter at the time that she started that study. And the amount of strength gains, not only did she see almost a 7% increase in her bone density as a 31-year-old power lifter. I think a power lifter's job is how much weight they can lift in one single rep. And
Sure.
that's what they compete upon. And so you would think, okay, 31 years old, she's a power lifter. She's already got strong bones. Yet she saw a 7% increase in her bone density in like 6 months.
Wow.
And her strength gains went through the roof. In order for her to see like a 12% increase in the amount of weight that she can lift in the gym, it takes her a full year of effort to achieve that objective. These are her words, not mine.
Wow.
She said after 4 weeks at OsteoStrong, she saw the same strength gains in the gym. She accomplished in 1 month, which would have taken her a year in the gym.
That's amazing. So
it's
sometimes I always think with people, because I'm in the health world, I teach Ayurveda, you have to find the reason. And so I heard about OsteoStrong. I thought it was great. I was like, this is logical. It makes sense. We should all worry about bone health. But I thought when I'm older, I'll worry about my bone health. But what you're saying is, as a longevity practice and as a biohacking tool, we can spend all this time in the gym lifting weight, but we could also invest in doing this for 6 months and personally for ourselves see the shift in our own results in the gym. And it can amplify it. It's like a foundational thing we can do.
Well, and there's other thing to take away, like everything else that you do in health and fitness, from working out to taking supplements and all those kinds of things to intermittent fasting, whatever your jam is, right? Yeah. Those things have to be done consistently. You can't stop doing those in your life, or you're going to reverse on the benefit of it. OsteoStrong is the only modality I've ever seen in the history of the world that if you did it for a couple of years, you may never have to do it again, because your bone density increases could be so great that you could add decades of bone density to your life. Now you're going to continue to decline at 1% per year after that.
Sure.
But if you gain 15, 20% in bone density in 2 years, you've added 15 to 20 years to your skeletal health.
That's awesome.
Now, for women, it is more challenging because they do have menopause. A woman can lose 25% of her bone mass during menopause. And it is my sincere desire that women would go at a minimum to OsteoStrong during menopause, so that if we could just keep them from losing bone density and they could stay the same, that's a massive victory. Then they don't start with that massive deficit going into their more senior years.
Sure. That's a big deal. That's a very big deal. So many women around me are coming to me and saying, look, I don't feel great and I need a new formula. Like I need a new way through. And as the owner of a supplement company, I'm always like, well, let's reduce inflammation with turmeric. Let's start there. But I know that there's so much more to it. And so I really do dive into intermittent fasting, circadian rhythm. Let's fix our sleep. Let's fix our inflammation. Like I go through my 6 pillars of health. But I'm so glad that you said yes to coming on the podcast, because this is something I never would have understood until we dove into it in this way. So when people come to an OsteoStrong and they can come regularly dressed, which you made that super convenient. Thank you. It's not like a workout where I have to get dressed and go, and it's only for that and then shower after. What is the process? Are we using like a machine that is implementing that exact amount of force against our body, against all the joints that matter?
Sort of. And so when you come into OsteoStrong, there's a trained session coach there that will take you through a session. It only takes like 5 or 6 minutes to go through the session. If you stay in OsteoStrong longer than that, it'll be because you want to take advantage of some of the other cool biohack modalities that we have there. Otherwise, you could be in and out of there in 5 to 7 minutes. And so the session coach will take you through 4 different machines or devices. And these devices, they look kind of like gym equipment. They function much differently than gym equipment. In fact, we couldn't manufacture these devices in the way that gym equipment is manufactured. And the reason why is that impact force builds bone. Impact force is great for the human body. It's really bad for the joints. Talk to any gymnast. That on average, a gymnast will retire at age 19. And there's also a high rate of hip and knee replacement surgeries among gymnasts. However, pound for pound, they're some of the strongest athletes in the world. They've got incredibly strong bones and muscles. So the idea is, how do we create impact level force without the impact? And so Dr. Jaquish was inspired because his mom in her 70s had osteoporosis, and he goes, this is not a disease. This is simply a deconditioning of bone. And so anything that's been deconditioned can be reconditioned. Sure. And so as he went and he discovered that force builds bone, there's another study he read out of Brazil, and it was working out. And one of the things that they found out was, let's say, for instance, I'm doing a bench press and I push the weight out. I'm 7 times stronger with my arms extended than I am on my chest, meaning I can impose 7 times more force at the apex of my push than off my chest. And you could say that for many things. So you're always much stronger. You can imagine that's a better leverage. So what he thought of is, how about we get people into their strongest range of motion, lock a device in place, give them some biofeedback to show them what they're doing, and then have them push as hard as they can for like 5 or 10 seconds. And then they're done. Once they get to, and you can see your power arc when you're doing OsteoStrong. And when you get to that point where you can't push any harder, you're done. Because your central nervous system is built with these adaptive responses that when given the appropriate stimulus, like walking outside on a hot day, you'll sweat. Going into a dark room, your pupils will dilate. You create a sufficient amount of force on your central nervous system, and your central nervous system, just like sweating on a hot day, will trigger your body's own natural adaptive responses to automatically start building bone, muscle density, joint and ligament density. And so you not only get ridiculously strong going to OsteoStrong, but you're just done with it. That's the thing I love about it. And so your central nervous system and your body's adaptive processes are all doing the work for you. Nice. And so people go in there, like the first time people do a session, they're like, did I do anything? I'm like, yeah, you just put 800 pounds through your lower extremities.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when it comes to these kinds of things, it's very easy for me to see how someone who's more senior could benefit from this, because they might not be a gym goer. They might not. I see that with my own mom. I lecture her all the time. I need you to walk an hour a day. I need you to train with the trainer. But are there any contraindications? Are there any people who should not do this?
People who are pregnant, people who have unmedicated hypertension.
Sure.
People have untreated hernia.
Right.
That's about it.
Okay. Awesome. Yeah. And so when it comes to this modality that you're working with now, how have you seen it change your own life? Because I know when we were talking before the call, you mentioned, you're going into a water fast. So it sounds like you're someone who's very dialed into your personal health and what you do. How have you seen it transform your life or the people close to you?
Utterly changed my life in a way I didn't expect it. So I went and met Dr. Jaquish. He had this device. 2 months later, we're opening up the first OsteoStrong, and I didn't even know how to explain it yet. I just was like, you know what? It's done already in my head, so I'm going to take massive action and do this. And I had suffered from decades of joint and back pain. My knees cracked and hurt. My right hip would sometimes kind of click out of place a little bit. My back hurt. I used to get migraine headaches every other week, all the way through my neck. I had a permanent knot on the right side of my neck from a sports-related injury in my early 20s. I had a bad right shoulder. I couldn't throw a ball with my oldest son when he was in the 5th grade because it hurt. So I had to do this underhand toss, and he used to make fun of me. And so my knees cracked as I went up and down the stairs. When I got on an airplane, I had to be either on an aisle seat or in business class, because if I couldn't either move around or stand up and walk around, I was guaranteed a headache out of a plane. And my headaches could last for days. I was taking probably on average 15 to 20 Advil a week. I tried chiropractic and acupuncture and all these kinds of things. When I did my first session at OsteoStrong, I could assure you on Jake, which is prototype, I can assure you I was scared. I was like, could this hurt me?
Yeah.
Right. And about 6 or 8 sessions later, I can't quite remember when, I had no more joint and back pain. My knees didn't hurt. My hips didn't hurt. My back didn't hurt. I just stopped getting headaches. And that story is one that applies to tens of thousands of other people who come to OsteoStrong, people with sciatic nerve pain and all these things that there just aren't solutions for. And I'm just thinking, how is this even possible? I'm putting force on my body and on my joints, and everything you're heard about does decompression and relieve the nerve impingement and all this stuff. And I'm doing the exact opposite.
Right.
And I'm getting this result. And so is everybody else. We've had more people come in with canes and walkers, but their balance improves so much and their joint and back pain goes away. They just don't need them anymore.
That's amazing.
And so I'm sitting here at 55 years old, feel so much better now. I remember now I have this outlook for my future. I don't even think about my physical, any limitations. I'm like, I'm going to be doing all kinds of crazy things well into my 90s. And I know that I am.
That's amazing. And I think so many people get so slowed down by their physical body. I see it all day because people come to me because they have arthritis, their rheumatoid arthritis, their joint pain. And I can see how slowly over time they lose function. They lose quality of life. They lose that will to go do things because they're scared.
Yes.
I see it around me and my friends. I'm like, guys,
I was there too. Pain forces you to protect yourself from more pain.
Correct.
And so you just start abbreviating activities that you would otherwise want to do.
Correct.
And so you're like that. I don't know. So I'm from the South, and then the way you train a junkyard dog, so I'm told, is you go kick it every day. And so even the sight of the boots will cause the junkyard dog to be afraid and angry.
Sure.
Pain is kind of like that for human beings. It's like you're that junkyard dog that's been kicked. And so you just avoid the boots, right? I'm not going to do that thing. And it is pain, chronic pain, in my opinion, is the beginning of death. And it could be a process that takes years, but I could assure you I would not look or feel or sound the same way that I do today had I not started this company. So, 12, 13 years ago, I was like 30 pounds heavier. I had poor posture and I was in pain. 11 more years of that. Right. And I would have been, I can't even imagine who I would be today. I can't even imagine what I would look like, how I'd feel, my energy, my attitude. I would just be chewing my cud, doing what I had to take care of my body and my life to the extent that I could so that I could provide for my family. And I was thinking in my late 40s, I thought I'm going to have a heart attack when I'm in my 60s. And I wasn't like bitching, and I'm not like this one manifestor negative. I was just doing the math, and I saw the trajectory I was on. I was like, this is unsustainable.
Right.
And now I'm a guy who talks about living well into his 90s, and I don't even think about it. I'm like, yeah, I know how to do that.
And that's the thing. I think so many of us look at life from that perspective of, okay, well, this is what happened to my parents. Like in my case, I saw what the 60s looked like, and it's horrible. It's heart attacks, it's strokes, it's all the advanced effects of type 2 diabetes. And so my whole life has been dedicated to how do you skip that? Because I don't want my last quarter of my life to look like that. What if my last quarter of my life could look the opposite? What if I could be living in Italy and active and walking and moving and thriving? And so I love that you created this tool, that you pulled the science together and are spreading this message of your bone health matters. You are not achieving it, even though you think you are, in the places where you are. And simultaneously, if we talk about this world of biohacking and being stronger and more vibrant, and you want to put on muscle, which so many of us do, then focusing on bone health is imperative. It's necessary to move forward, which even I didn't know when we started this podcast today.
It's not just focusing on it, it's focusing on the solution and letting your body do the rest.
Sure.
And I feel kind of bad that OsteoStrong is really the only solution to do that, because it comes across as so self-serving.
Sure.
And so it's like, if I thought there were 100 places you could go do this, I'd still be advocating it.
Yeah.
It's an industry that we created out of thin air. And so because we're first ones doing it, whatever, it's the only solution as far as I could tell.
Sure. And so can people just find an OsteoStrong in their own city, and then all they have to do is sign up, go try it?
Yeah,
then...
most centers will let people do a free session just to try it out, see what the thing is, because I can sit here and describe it all day long.
Sure.
And until you do it, you just won't ever really know what that feels like. Like, what does that feel like? It doesn't hurt. And it's like a nothing. You're just going to feel like, is that really a thing? But I could tell you this as well, that if you were to go to OsteoStrong for a month or two, 5 or 8 sessions, everything you do physically is going to get easier.
That's awesome. I'll know it, because for me, I'm actively lifting in this gym. We're doing a lot of the same moves every few weeks. So I'm watching, and today I was able to go to like 75 pounds on the hip thruster. And I was like, but all these women around me are doing over 100 pounds. Like, why? I always look around. I'm usually the younger one, but I'm not as strong as all the women ahead of me. And I'm like, okay, what am I doing wrong? What am I not eating?
My wife is in her 50s. She goes and does HIIT training. She goes and does classes. She also does OsteoStrong, and she completely outperforms every girl in her 20s and 30s. They can't even keep up with her.
Yeah. And I want to see that I'm holding my strength and not like shying away from it, not holding back.
You will increase your strength. You will increase your strength.
That's awesome. I'm excited about it. Thank you. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share with our audience today? Anything else that we didn't get into that you feel like they should hear before we wrap up?
Just go to OsteoStrong, osteostrong.me, try it out. Your future self will thank you more than anything. I know my future self does. Like I said, I wouldn't know where I'd be today without it. The types of things you learn from this podcast are absolutely critical. Pick 4 or 5 that you can do, and you will see inflammation and disease and longevity improve. Like, you don't have to do everything us crazy biohacker types do, but if I were to narrow it down to 3 or 4 things, there's like probably 3 or 4 things that do like 90% of the benefit.
Sure.
That I want. It's not a lot. It's not hard, but you could have like an incredible outcome, a life free of pain, mobility. You'll have that. You'll have the strength to do what you want. In reality, what we really want as human beings, where we get the most fulfillment, is when we're giving and shining our light into the world. And if you yourself are inhibiting that because of your physical limitations, I get it. I used to be there, but there are solutions for you. There are things that are easy to do that you will do, and it won't be that big of a deal. You don't have to do all this manipulation to get yourself into a peak physical state because you want to do that. You just sometimes have to do a little bit of that, but it's not hard, and you could succeed, and you could win, and you could win for everybody around you.
I love that. Thank you as that last message today. And thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. So everyone can visit osteostrong.me, find OsteoStrong on Instagram. And if you have any questions, reach out to Kyle. Kyle, are you on social media as well, or they should just reach out to OsteoStrong?
OsteoStrong, but you could reach out to me. LinkedIn, I probably check it more than anything, but I don't spend too much time on social media. So if I don't respond to you, know this: it's about a once or twice a month thing for me to go check messages on social media.
Got it. No, I totally get that. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate the time you took to explain this and the science behind it. It's a topic that I think most people have not thought about as profoundly, because they just assume that their bone health is fine until they learn that it isn't. And so it's so important to talk about these preventive messages for our health, so we understand what we need to be doing for our longevity. So thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for joining me for this episode. Check out our sponsor, Fusionary Formulas, the potent turmeric supplement used by doctors around the U.S. for patients with pain and inflammation. www.fusionaryformulas.com. I'm your host, Dr. Shivani Gupta. For more, visit shivanigupta.com. Subscribe to this podcast in Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Click the follow button or subscribe in any of the apps that you use. That's all I've got for you on the Fusionary Health Podcast this week. You have the power to transform your health and achieve vibrant health starting today.